Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, all of you. I saw the schedule last week and I was thinking about it. Well, if I should choose myself between talk about Spree or Rails 4, I might even go to Rails 4, but thanks for coming here after all. This talk is about Spree, and Spree from the trenches is how I work with Spree and the choices that I make implementing Spree. I have a small company myself where I implement Spree web shops, and next to that I'm also a CTO of a small stock agency in Amsterdam where I work as a developer. So Spree is a 100% open source e-commerce platform, and I will start with a short history of Spree, and after that I will go to dive right in how to implement and how to customize. So in 2007, Sean Schofield created RailsCart, and there was some debate going on between Sean and DHH. And I don't know exactly if there was a legal statement or something, but he needed to change the name, and he made the choice to name it Spree. And the Rails part wasn't allowed, or DHH wasn't comfortable with the Rails part in it. So I did a Google search a few days ago, and I actually found the first actual code from RailsCart. It's still on the Google Code Subversion repository. Everything's there, and it's quite funny to find out what choices are being made right there. Between 2007 and 2010, Spree slowly gained traction. More contributors came, more shops were being deployed using Spree, and that resulted in a $1.5 million funding in 2011. And SpreeCommerce Incorporated was born right then, and that company is solely focused on making Spree more awesome and keeping Spree 100% open source all the time. So that's a really good thing. One of the first things they did was hire Ryan Biggs, one of the Rails heroes. He's a community manager at Spree, and that's a really good thing. And another big thing happened in 2011. The first point release was finally there, Spree 1.0. Now 2012, it's not over yet. We had 2 conferences. SpreeConf New York was amazing to be there. A few weeks ago actually, we had a SpreeConf in Dublin. At the moment there are more than 300 contributors on the Spree GitHub page. And this is a step from like 2 hours ago, 137,290 downloads on Ruby Gems, and almost 3,000 downloads for the latest version, that's 1.2. So what is the typical Spree structure? How do you set up Spree? Well, Spree is actually just an engine. So you need Ruby, you need a Rails app, and then on top of that, Spree has a lot of own engines inside them. SpreeCore is the main engine that you need with all the models and some views. And SpreeCommand is another engine that gives you the command line interface to build your Spree store and actually execute some commands. Spree Dash is for dashboard admin interface. Spree Promo for promo codes, coupon codes. And Spree API provides a RESTful interface to communicate with your Spree store, so you could hook up with any other API interfaces. And one of the biggest choices that is being made in Spree 1.2.0 is that the SpreeCore team extracted the authentication completely out of SpreeCore and provided you with a choice to use the Spree auth device or build your own. And that way you can easily integrate Spree in Refinery, for example, if you use the Refinery user model. And I think that's a really smart choice to do. And of course, custom extensions. Spree is very lean and small, provides only the basics that you need to build your web shop. So extension system is really big, so you can easily build your own extensions for your Spree shop. So how do you create your very first shop? Well, you need 2 things. You need the Rails gem and you need a Spree gem. You create your Rails store, your Rails application as a container to host your Spree store. And then you issue the Spree install my store command, and the -a option accepts all the questions. It's an interactive install, so if you just want to have a clean, empty set, you can answer no to every question. It will ask you if you want to use the Spree auth device. It's going to ask you if you want to seed the data, and it also asks you if you want to have some sample code, some sample products, and some sample orders. So if you do that and you run your server, this is what you see. It's a new interface based on skeleton, so it's responsive as well. But don't do this. If you really want to get started with your Spree implementation, don't use the gem, in my opinion. Use the Git stable branch. Because Spree is evolving really, really fast, and one of the main things that the contributors and the community manager is doing is keeping track of all the issues that are there and fixing them really fast in the stable branches and releasing point releases of the gems a few weeks after. But if you want to keep track on and want to keep the speed in your development, you better use the Git stable branch. So to do that, you have to change your gem file to point it to the Git URL and then specify the branch you want to use. So this is the URL to the current 1.2 stable branch. So now you get your store set up and looking at the screen and thinking by yourself, okay, now what? Extension. There's an extensive extension registry on the SpreeCommerce site as well. You can create an account there. You can upload your extension, at least enter your extension information. You can search for it. They have a version file kind of extension management tool that you can specify your version of Spree that your extension is compatible with. So you can search over here which extension is suitable for your current version. And there are a lot of extensions. I don't really use this site that often because most of the extensions can be easily found using GitHub. Just search for Spree and mention that you don't want to fork. And because of the Spree system, when you create an extension, it's always being prefixed with a Spree underscore. You get all the Spree extensions, and there are 1,376 at the moment. So if the extension that you need or the functionality you need is not there in an extension, the best chance you have is that there is an extension that has some access point where you can start, or you can just create your own extension. And an extension in Spree is nothing more than a Rails engine, actually. It provides some extra code to hook into Spree, which I'm going to show you in a bit. And to create your extension, you need to execute the Spree command with the extension and then the name of the extension that you want. And it will create a typical engine gem format. And it's provided with a nice README, even to show you how to run your specs. And as you can see, it's just a Rails engine. It does some extra things with the activate method, and it's not really visible right now, but every underscore decorator file is being loaded as well. I will be coming back to that later, how you can override some logic. In the gem spec, Capybara is already set up for you, Factory Girl, Faker, RSpec, to do the basic common TDD testing for your extension. And the funny thing is, I'm going to go back to this, the rake test app command will generate a dummy application which hooks into the Spree gem as well. So you have a complete Spree website available within your extension to do proper request specs. So I mentioned decorators, and a decorator is something that you can use to open up the Spree classes and add your own functionality. For example, the homepage or product extension that I just showed, I want to be able to mark a product that I need to show on the homepage. And to do that for the model at least, I create a product decorator in the models folder, open up the Spree product class with class eval, add my show on homepage attribute accessible, and create a small scope to list all the products that I need to be on the homepage. And very important, if you develop Spree extensions, try to make them small and concise, if possible. I can understand that there could be some complex situation that you need in your store that an extension can solve, and it's going to be complex. But when you create components like this, when they keep them small and concise, it's easier to test, it's easier to customize, it's easier to communicate between co-workers, and just keep your components small and concise. And whatever you do, do not create a complete site extension and dump everything in it, unless you're theming. If you're theming for a site, I think that's okay to do. Just have the assets there, the JavaScripts, the CSS, and all that. Because if you do that, it will become the config initializer sinkhole. It's going to be crap, actually. I've been there. And another thing that I think is really, really important while building a store, hire great designers. Designers that can make something from this to this, and from the product show page to another product show page. And this is a really important question. We get it a lot on IRC and on the mailing list. How do I override my views? Do I or do I not use Deface? Why should I use Deface? What is Deface actually? Well, Deface is a gem built by Brian Quinn. It's currently under the Spree GitHub repository. And what Deface allows you to do is override certain areas of your view using XPath expressions. It hooks in the pre-render of ERB, of actually active renderer. So you can even use HAML for your views. And what it does is it has some actions you can use on certain areas of your code. I'm going to show you a few samples. So the best practice is to create an app overrides folder in your Rails app or your extension. And you can create a Deface override. And to create an override, you need 4 things. You need a virtual path. So that's the view that's being overridden. That's not correctly. That's the view that's being used to evaluate the expression for the snippet or the piece of code you want to override. So in this sample, this is a Spree layout, Spree application. That's the default layout that's being rendered. And I just give it an arbitrary name. I want to replace the layout body. And the replace action actually says, find me something that matches the data hook equals body. And what I find, I want to replace it with another file. And in this case, this is a partial place and shared replace body layout. The recent version of Deface comes with a great new DSL, so you don't have to build all your Ruby files in one app overrides folder. You can actually group the overrides for your specific view. So it's nicely grouped. So in this case, I create an app overrides and then Spree layouts, Spree underscore application. And every override for the Spree application will be in this directory. So it's way more structured than a bunch of RB files. They provide the syntax is that you can use the Deface prefix, and the body, the name of the file becomes the name of the override. And like I mentioned, if you use HAML here, that's perfectly sane. You can actually override ERBs with HAML. And this is what it looked like. It's the same override. It has a comment at the top. And that is an instruction for Deface to do exactly the same as the previous sample, replace something with the data hook body. And then the body of the file is actually the source that's being replaced. So now you get proper color syntax coding, and you just need to map the Deface extension to use HAML or Rails, the Rails view. So here you can find some more information about Deface. I won't go into depth on Deface right now, but there are a lot of actions you can do, copy-paste kind of things. You can repeatedly change things, and it does CSS XPath matching. So that's really nice project. But sometimes you just want to override the complete view. And to do that, you just need to override the virtual path in your app. So if you create an app view Spree home index html.erb, the application always wins in render order. So this is just a snippet of the homepage that I've created for the ethnic chic sample that I just shown you. And my rule of thumb is if you don't use any default Spree views, so you actually override the complete view, don't use Deface. It just adds an extra layer, and it doesn't add anything One thing that I probably forgot to mention is that Deface also tracks the version that you replaced with a hash. So if Spree upgrades and you run your server, you can see in the error logs, in the console logs, that you're actually overriding an older version of the view. So it keeps you in the loop of the changes that you need to do. But if you just override a complete view, just use the same path. And then you try to do that, and then you ask yourself, where are the Spree views? Happens all the time. Well, they're inside the gem. How do I find it? Well, I started with the T command on GitHub. It's really nice. If you're on a GitHub page, on a repository, you press the T button, you get a nice search box. You can start typing, and the files that are matching showing up. So this is a possibility. You could also use the bundle open command to open the gem. It will open up your editor with the sources of the gem that you installed. You could also clone the code and do a symlink in your project. So do like this in your project, and then change the gem file to use this Spree path that you just created. And then you can do the Command-T, Command-Shift find, and try to dive into the internals of Spree and try to find the views and the partials and the overrides and the overridden overrides in other extensions. And I find that that's a little bit nasty. I don't like it. So I created a gem recently called Graffiti. And what Graffiti does is when you install it, and you just need to install it in development, in the development group in your gem file, and you go to the /graffiti, a nice black box appears with an arrow. It's not really visible, the arrow, but and when you press the arrow, you can see the complete layout of the page you're on. So this is the Spree layout, Spree application. I've blown up the screen a little bit to make it visible, but when you're in normal view, you can actually read it. And you can see that in this Spree application, there's even already an override, Deface. And you can see what template is being rendered. You can also see what overrides are on that template, and all the partials that are there. So the taxonomies, the structure you can use to find your products. So it's really easy to find the views. And when you click on the link, you can actually see the code that's on the Spree gem. So if you only want to override the sidebar navigation, for example, you can create a Deface override for the data hook, homepage sidebar navigation, and the virtual path should be Spree home index. So it's really easy to find the views you need to override. And one other thing that's coming up on IRC all the time is that I'm on the cart. Where's my cart view? I'm looking for perhaps app views, cart, new or something. Well, actually, it's an edit of an order. And that's a sample that you can see right here. It really helps to find the correct virtual path to do your override. Current state of this Deface of Graffiti is that it's an untested spike. I think it's one of the worst Ruby ever. But what I do is I hook into the notification system of Rails3 and build an in-memory database of all the actions and controllers that are being used. So you can list all those things on your current page. This will be on GitHub soon. I had this conversation with a refactor guru. He's going to be talking later as well, and with the gruff talk of Yehuda in my mind. Don't need to be worried about bad code. Just open it up and try to get people involved. So I'm going to push it to GitHub anytime soon. Before my last slides, are there any questions already? One more thing. Spree almost blew it for me, but currently there were a new branch emerged on the Spree GitHub page. It was a really sneaky way to push a branch and don't say anything about it. I noticed it, made a screenshot. 2 days later, it was in master and already a blog post, but I'm going to show you the slides anyway. So this is the current Spree administration when you log in, and this is the new one that's coming up. It's in master right now, and it's still a little bit rough around the edges, but I think it looks really, really nice, and that's something that's been planning for, I think, almost 2 years now. So I'm really happy that the new admin interface is currently there. I think it's time for drinks. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your talk.
Yeah, no problem.